Of course, on the surface, Daphne du Maurier's novel Rebecca is a story of haunting, of a narrator who, of course, marries a man twice her age, Maxim de Winter, whose lovely and luscious wife Rebecca died a year before in a mysterious drowning, and the narrator, young, inexperienced, insecure, one might say neurotic, comes to the great Cornwall estate Manderley with her new husband, Maxim de Winter. And immediately she feels the presence of Rebecca everywhere. Rebecca seems to have been everything our narrator is not. Note I'm saying narrator because the narrator in the novel never uh, is named. She's never named, and of course that is deliberate on Du Maurier's part, because this is very much a novel about a narrator seeking an identity, and she doesn't have a clear identity for much of the novel. In any case, Rebecca, she learns rather quickly, was a woman of great beauty, of great wit, of great grace, of great charm. She was sexy, and in contrast, our narrator sees herself as drab and dull. So, for much of the novel, we see the manager of the servants at Manderley, Miss Danvers. We see her clearly deeply in love with the dead Rebecca. We see her antagonizing the narrator, basically on the dead Rebecca's behalf, as if to say, you cannot take Rebecca's place. No one can take Rebecca's place. I love Rebecca. The other members of the staff love Rebecca. And we basically will make your life miserable here to teach you that you do not belong here. It is still Rebecca's house. So this narrative line dominates the plot. Our narrator in first person is constantly talking about how she finds Rebecca's presence in Manderley. She finds one of her handkerchiefs in a coat one day. She can smell her perfume sometimes. There's a famous scene where Miss Danvers, in a very sensual way, shows the narrator Rebecca's lovely clothing. So it is a sort of psychological ghost story, if you will, where the narrator is allowing the image of Rebecca to haunt her, to obsess her, constantly making her feel inferior, constantly making her feel as if she's not up to the task. And certainly Miss Danvers is helping the process along, at least as Miss Danvers is represented by our narrator. Scholars for a long time have concluded that it's obvious Miss Danvers has a deep romantic attachment to Rebecca. She was obviously in love with Rebecca. The way she speaks about Rebecca suggests this. The way she touches Rebecca's things suggests this. So it's almost as if she is Rebecca's proxy, still above ground, and out to carry out what she thinks would be Rebecca's will, which is, of course, to make sure that no one comes into Manderley to take her place as the wife of Maxim de Winter. However, there is another way to see the narrator's relationship to Rebecca. Even though she is terrified of Rebecca, even though she sees Rebecca as the bane of her existence, there's also a part of her that, like Miss Danvers, seems to be in love with Rebecca. She is drawn to Rebecca's sexuality in ways that suggest that she is like Miss Danvers. Let's talk about this for a minute. Now we have to remember what her relationship with Maxim de Winter is like. She is a paid companion in Monte Carlo for a wealthy yet very crude American woman, Miss Van Hopper. Our narrator is British. She seems to come from a kind of lower middle class family. Her parents have died. She did love her father very much. So there she is, not very old, probably not even quite 20 yet. And Maxim de Winter shows up in Monte Carlo. He's trying to spend some time away from Manderley, seemingly mourning the death of Rebecca. And after courting the young narrator for several days, driving her around the French countryside, he proposes to her in a brusquely non-romantic way. I'm asking you to marry me, you fool, something like that. She didn't quite understand where he was coming from when he said, I'll take you to Manderley with me. You can go with Miss Von Hopper, who's going to New York. You can come to Manderley with me. And she thought, do you need me to come as a paid companion, as a kind of secretary, or as a kind of maid? Do you need that for me? He says, no, you little fool. I'm asking you to marry me. And she marries him, even though he himself does not tell her he loves her. It's a very matter-of-fact, very cold proposal. And this is what we need to get about Maxim de Winter. It lives up to his name. He is cold. We don't see him kiss our narrator anywhere but on the forehead for most of the novel. We don't hear him say that he loves her for most of the novel. It seems like the two of them aren't having sexual relations. There's not any kind of passion or erotic energy between the two. Indeed, it is as if she is in some ways a paid companion for him. Furthermore, she is a daughter to him. He says to her, you are half my age. I'm old enough to be your father. And he treats her like a father would a daughter. Early on, our narrator tells us that she has a kind of crush on him like a young boy would on an older boy. She says in another place that you are to me my father and my husband, but also my brother and my son. And she refers to him as her brother in other places as well. The point being that the relationship seems utterly asexual. It seems to be more like the relationship of siblings or parent and child than anything else. And the way that De Winter treats her is with distance and reserve. He lacks any empathy for her, definitely no sympathy for her either. So the narrator has no love in her life. She has no erotic outlet in her life. She has no sensual pleasure in her life until she starts fantasizing about Rebecca. So, when she first enters the morning room where Rebecca would spend her mornings writing letters and whatnot, she is taken by the grace and the charm and the beauty of the place. But the first thing she notices is that right outside the window are crimson rhododendrons. And they are blood red and luscious. And they sort of overlook the room. Now, this isn't the first time that our narrator has mentioned rhododendrons. When she first makes her way into Manderley, she notices the rhododendrons and how big they are. They were monsters rearing to the sky, massed like a battalion, too beautiful and too powerful. They were not plants at all. Beautiful, powerful. And even in the very beginning of the novel, where our narrator recounts a dream in which she goes back to Manderley, and it's falling into disrepair, she talks about how the rhododendrons, which have been left to grow on their own, are now 50 feet high, twisted and entwined with bracken, and they had entered into alien marriage with a host of nameless shrubs, poor bastard things that clung about their roots, though conscious of their spurious origin. So here the rhododendrons are sexualized. They're monstrous again. They're gigantic. They're twisted and entwined, and they enter into alien marriages with various shrubs. So they're sexually voracious, entering into sexual relationships with anything around them. So for the narrator to associate Rebecca with the rhododendron fairly early in the novel makes the connection quite clear that for her, even though Rebecca scares her, even though Rebecca seems to drain power from her, Rebecca also clearly turns her on. She is like the rhododendron. She is blood red. She is luscious. She is powerful. She is beautiful. She is sexually voracious. And for a woman who has zero sexual outlet with her husband or anyone else, it would make sense that Rebecca would be a sex object, an object of desire as much as an object of fear. So as the novel goes on, sometimes the narrator will talk about the scents, the smells that Rebecca has left behind. At one point, she finds a handkerchief, as I think I mentioned a minute ago, in an old coat and smells it, and it smells like, it reminds her of Rebecca. It smells like lilacs. So this puts us in a position where the seeming enemy of the narrator, Miss Danvers, might strangely be a double of the narrator. Miss Danvers madly in love with Rebecca, but unable to articulate that love in a world where same-sex relationships were not accepted in a time period in the 30s in England. And the narrator, too, has a deep erotic longing for Rebecca, but doesn't have a language to express it. So it's almost as if now we see Miss Danvers not simply as someone who is out to wreak revenge on someone who would try to take Rebecca's place, but also as a jealous lover. She senses as the novel unfolds that the narrator is as erotically attached to Rebecca as she. And the narrator gets access to parts of the house that get her closer to Rebecca in a way. The narrator gets to go to the morning room and spend time there. The narrator can go anywhere she wants to and spend time there, being close to Rebecca's things. She has access to Rebecca's things that she could eroticize in ways that the narrator, that Miss Danvers does not. So this novel obviously is, though on the surface very much a sort of gothic romance in the tradition of Jane Eyre, is also something much else as well. It's a very twisted psychosexual account of repression and longing and a desire to articulate feelings that don't really have a language for them at this time in history. So as you go through the novel, just think about how the narrator's descriptions of Rebecca as an enemy, if you pay close attention to them, also read as descriptions of a woman that she sexually desires.